now an episode dedicated exclusively to Arsenal's transfer business. Thanks for listening. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot, the Black Man on Twitter. Gunner, yeah, that's it. We'll come back to you on Monday with another pod, and I'm kidding, but I'm not. We haven't, literally speaking, signed anyone. But maybe the signings were the friends we made along the way. And if that's the case, then we're all rich in signings, I think it is fair to say. So we can feel really good about that. Clive took his turn and did the Director of Football podcast. And I have to tell you, we got a lot of really, really good feedback about it. A lot of people talking about just the class and quality of my hosting. And no, I'm kidding. Can you imagine? No, it was just about Clive's analysis and insight. But it's fun. We put a chart up. We have a net spend. We pick the players we're going to buy. We publish that chart so you can see exactly the business that Arsenal should be doing. And Arsenal, if you're listening, and we know you're not, definitely check out that chart. We also are doing the Transfer Daily. It has launched. We did a 1-hour Transfer Daily to kick it off to cover the deals that have happened. We've been doing them every day. Yesterday, we did a final power rankings where we look actually ahead to next season with Phil Costa and rank Chelsea and Liverpool and City and Spurs and United and Newcastle and a wild card club that he named. Which club was it? You'll have to listen to find out. Oh, it's so exciting. So we got a lot of stuff going on over there. If you use code AVP, get 50% off. So please do that. Do that and join us. What are you going to do all summer? You going to scroll social media? No. Ditch social media. We'll scroll it for you and we'll give you the Transfer Daily. It'll be even better. All right. Enough of that nonsense. We're doing a countdown episode today. 10 big questions for the group facing Arsenal right now. A lot of them are about transfers. Some of them are about nonsense. All of them are going to be, I think it's fair to say, the elite god tier of podcasting because Clive is here. Hello, Clive.
Hello. How are you?
And taking it to the next level, not just in terms of his Barnet, but also in terms of his insight. It's the man from the Chronicles of the Gooner, Harry Symeou. Hello, Harry.
How you doing, mate? Thanks for having me.
Brilliant for you to be here in between all of your many things that you do, including soon an expanding family. So you've got a lot going on, and we appreciate your time, Harry.
No, thanks for having me. The pleasure is all mine. I listen to pretty much every episode, so to feature alongside you guys is an honor. Thank you.
Pretty much every episode, Harry?
Yeah,
pretty much.
You've got such a great content schedule.
Okay.
There's so much content, Elliot, that sometimes one or two go under the radar for me, just because there's so many. I'm a patron too, so just because there's so many.
Got me on tilt, pretty much. Come on. All right, enough of that. Let's get into the top 10 questions. And question number 10, and realize we're going to deal with everything real and not real. So let's deal with the nonsense first, the transfer rumors. Harry, question number 10, Morgan Rodgers linked to Arsenal. Is this a midfielder we should be going for?
As far as I can see, I'm not sure there's too much in this one, to be honest with you. And for me, Morgan Rodgers is a really exciting and wonderful player, but I'm not sure he's what we're missing. And I'm really kind of big going into this window on Arsenal addressing the gaps in their skill set. And I don't think that Morgan Rodgers necessarily does that for us. I think for me, we're looking for midfielders with a bit more guile, with a bit more creativity. I think Morgan Rodgers is someone that makes chances for himself with his kind of really robust and powerful nature. And he's definitely a threat. And we've experienced that playing against Aston Villa. So we know all about it. But for me, he's not necessarily a player that Arsenal should be looking at because I don't think he necessarily brings to the table some of the tools that maybe we're missing just based on my kind of assessment and analysis of last season.
Yeah, interesting. I will say this. Managers do tend to have an affinity for players that have wrecked them. And Morgan Rodgers was one of the rare players that kind of wrecked us. And by the way, PSG really struggled with him as well. He definitely has a unique ball carrying capacity. For me with Morgan Rodgers, the issue is simply, where does that fit? If you've got Zubimendi pinging balls from the back and you've got Declan Rice playing the 8 and you've got Martin Odegaard playing the other 8 and Kai Havertz will sometimes presumably play in midfield at times this season, it's an interesting fit because he's not a 6 in my mind, certainly not in our system. He feels a bit like a Rice analog in the way he wants to play the 8. Could we go with Rice, Rodgers, and Zubimendi? I mean, it's a lot of physical power and running power and ball carrying. Does it have the passing element? I don't know. It's an interesting one, Clive. Let's just say this. He reeks of Newcastle to me. I could see that being a place he would go. Fits sort of their ethos in midfield, but He's a player that I would be really excited to see at Arsenal if only I could figure out where he would fit, and that's where this starts to fall apart for me.
Yeah, forget us, right? If I knocked on Aston Villa's door and said, which is the one player you don't want to lose? And this would be the first name that comes from their lips, right? So everybody else is probably movable, so he is.
Can I just say one thing on that, Clive? If you look at all 20 clubs that'll be in the Premier League next season, the one in the worst PSR situation is Villa. And the way you get out of PSR isn't selling the players people don't want. It's getting one really highly sought after asset off the books for big money,
Yeah, but we can do what Newcastle did last year by moving on Elliot Anderson to Nottingham Forest and doing some player swaps and things like that.
Sell a hotel.
They'll do a lot more. They'll do a lot more things before they sell Morgan Rodgers. That's for sure. Unless he was to agitate. I think he signed a contract last season. So hey, look, it's not hard to imagine. Forget the nuances of the role, Elliot. He's a top level player, and we are at Harrods now, mate. So the players that are going to come in, we're going to know them all, probably. There could be one or two surprises because we've got a new sporting director, but there shouldn't be too many surprises because of the level that we're at. So we're trying to improve that level, which means we're going to know a few of these people. So the name Morgan Rodgers is a sort of level, but as I say, I don't see him moving out. I've just seen the headline of that, and I didn't bother clicking it because
you're a better man than I am.
Clicking it. So, I saw it, went to check where you're getting information from, and I thought, mate, there's PSR issues and there's club about to fold issues. Maybe then you get him, but until then, I would build around him rather than sell him if I'm Villa.
Yeah, look, we do in Transfer Daily, we do 0 to 5 poop emojis. This is 5 poop emojis, but he's an exciting player, and I think, to your point, Clive, if you can get that player, you probably look past the nuances of where they fit and do it. Although some people would say you can't go spaffing 100 million pounds on players you don't have a clean fit for. I don't know. It's not going to happen. So, Clive, let's move on to one that seems more strongly linked, but to me, equally bizarre. And that is, do you believe that Konstantinos Karetsas is coming to Arsenal for 45 million euros? 17-year-old from Genk, attacking midfielder who can play winger. Is this happening, Clive?
Well, I don't. Again, I saw that one this morning, and I think that level of player is top, right? So this is no bad player. This is a good player. Yeah. There's 2 or 3 players coming out of Greece that are quite good. I don't know why you're talking to me because Harry's right here, right? So
well, we've got the inside scoop from Harry. He's coming next. Yeah.
He's probably thinking, "Oh, mate, Clive, you leave this one to me," right? So, but to be fair, if you look at some of the Champions League youth games, which I have done, and there's an increase in quality of Greek youth players, right? Without a doubt. My Olympiacos had a run a couple of years ago, so there's some good things happening there. So. Top level player, but one YouTube clip, just have a look at him, and what do you see? You see a Max Dowman, Ethan Nwaneri, Bukayo Saka type player, and he does spend time on the left wing. Again, I looked this morning, but I don't know how much time. So the quality is top. Everyone knows who he is. Do I see that as a priority need? Not with our team. We've got so many lefties in the bank that can move on that side of the pitch. I'm not sure we need another one at this time.
That's the crux of it. If you believe that Max Dowman is the future at Arsenal, if you believe Ethan Nwaneri is the future at Arsenal, if you believe Bukayo Saka is going to come good as a player at the Premier League level at some point in his career, you do get to the point where this just makes less and less and less sense. But you can also make the argument, much like Chelsea clearly have, acquiring the best young talent in world football can be a strategy for financial success, if not sporting success. However, acquiring them at 45 million euros, I don't know. That feels a little high, unless you think you're talking about Lamine Yamal. So, Harry, why don't we do this? Before we get you weighing in on that player, you had a little inside info that you shared with me before the pod. Let's not share that. I want people to wonder what it was. No, I'm kidding. Can you share that with me?
Yeah, so when I woke up this morning, you can imagine being from a Greek background, when you see your club linked with a Greek player, your ears perk up, right? You wake up in the morning, you're thinking, oh my God, this is a thing. And this
your
is a
hair
player...
grew another 1 inch in thickness.
That's it, another 1 inch in thickness, absolutely. And for me, this is a player that's been on my radar for quite some time. He's recently broken into the senior national team. And the thing that makes Karetsas so exciting is that Greece don't normally produce this type of footballer. If you go back to Euro 2004, which is when Greece really put themselves on a map, it was physical, powerful, very defensive-minded, very disciplined players. But ever since then, there's always been a feeling in Greek football that there's been a lack of flair. And that lack of flair has stopped them progressing as a nation. All of a sudden, there's 2 or 3 players coming through the ranks that really have that in an abundance, and this is one of them. He really showed up against Scotland recently, which I think put him on a lot of people's radars. Scored a fabulous goal, and he's just 17 years old. He is a big, big talent. There's no question in my mind about how good this young man is. So this morning when I woke up and I read the story, I decided to sort of dig into where the story had come from. And I got in touch with a couple of friends of mine who are sports journalists over in Greece, and I managed to get hold of the person who put the story out, and some of the people that were working around this story. And it was put to me that, yes, they believe that there is an interest, and the information around the fee and that sort of thing had been briefed by the players' camp, rather than it coming from sort of an Arsenal source or anything like that. So you've got to be a little bit wary of that, I think. And this person told me directly that there is a history of people within Karetsas' camp coming out and saying things that maybe haven't always turned out to be 100% true. So, you've got to be a bit wary of that. He also mentioned, though, that this is not a fee that Arsenal would be paying up front or in one go. This would be a sort of longer term investment, and it would be, as is in the report for everybody to see, with a view to him staying on loan at Genk for another year and developing. So it's a bit like what we did with kind of William Saliba, where we'd be betting on a talent early, sending them back to their club. And he didn't rule out the possibility of him going out and spending a second year on loan as well. So this is quite an interesting story, I think. But I know the fee sounds extortionate. I really like him. I like the idea of stockpiling these players. I like the idea of going and investing in these players early. My one thing is that how much of a priority is this? Now, if you can still do your main business while making this investment and putting him on ice, essentially, then I'm all for it. But it can't be something that we do instead of going and getting some of those real kind of key players that we want to see come in the positions that we need first and foremost. Everybody talks one area, everybody talks Dauman. I love both of them. I think they're fantastic talents. I do feel like we're going a bit early on Max Dauman, though. I've watched him a couple of times in the flesh, and I've been really, really impressed. But don't underestimate, I'm sure Clive will tell you, the leap up from that level of football, under 18s level, which is where I saw him play, going into senior football. It's a big jump. So there's no guarantee that you make that jump and successfully straight away. So I don't think that should be a reason to stop us from going and acquiring more talent, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Clive?
Yeah, I've seen Max Dauman play live, and I've got to say he's quite talented.
Yeah, just a bit.
I don't think balance is an issue for him. He's just incredible to watch, and but we'll see. He's young. But what I will say is where he is in his stage of his development, and Arsenal are contractually vulnerable regarding him, I would want to make sure that he knows that we are really prioritising him. So if he wakes up like Harry did this morning and looks at the YouTubes and sees this player and thinks, hold on, that's me. Right? So and so all the clubs that are knocking his door and getting hold of his dad right now to come and see them, they're going to be encouraged again. Say, look, Arsenal not even thinking about you. Hey, look, we're if buts and maybes, but if you look around, I always look at my competitive landscape. So who are our competitors? We've got Chelsea, the Man Cities, the Liverpools, Man United, and so basically, and what are some of those teams doing? They're buying young, and it's important that we think not just for now, but of tomorrow. And look at the City signings in January, and look at what they're trying to do now. Look what Liverpool are potentially doing with a couple of young fullbacks and a young attacking midfielder. We have to look at this and align ourselves to our competitive landscape as well. I'm not saying for this player alone, but generally, when we talk about centre-forward options and things like that, we want to make sure that we can compete with these teams, but not just next year, but for the next 4 years, minimum. And that's what we should be thinking about. And look at the timeline of some of their key core players and where are they going. And Chelsea have gone ridiculously young, but we were there 3 years ago with the Ramsdale, White, that crew that came in. We're the ones who 24 average age, right? So give us a couple more years now. We're in the 25s, 26s. But Chelsea are going young. City are going young. Liverpool are going dynamic and quite young. I do think when we're thinking about the summer, think about that as well, not just our near-term problems.
Yeah. A few things about Karetsas. Karetsas? Karetsas.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Okay.
It's more like
Thank
a
you.
G sound than a K. It's
Karetsas.
spelt with a K, but yeah.
Well, he made 25 appearances in the Belgian Pro League for the team that won the league, Genk, 1,160 league minutes at 16/17 years old. You know, that's not just a prospect, right? That's not someone who's been playing youth football. That's someone who's playing senior football, and the numbers look okay for someone playing senior football. But I think Clive's point is key. You have to show that you're committed to developing the talent you have in your academy. Now, this is where it gets hard as a club, because if Karetsas goes on to be a superstar and we don't buy him, people are going to go, what's going on with Arsenal? We looked at this guy. We were linked with him. You know, can we not figure out who the future stars are? If we do buy this guy, the first thing people are going to say is, we're trying to win the Champions League, the Premier League. We can't buy a striker, but we can buy a 17-year-old. You can't win, right? You've got to get it right. But, Harry, this is just a quick point. I want to stay on question 2, so to speak. You know what? Actually, let's split it. Let's make this question 3 of the top 10 then, which is, how do we promote our youth players in a time when the expectation is that we must win a trophy? We must win a trophy. And people want it to be the League Cup if it has to be. But we are really, and everybody knows, trying to win the Champions League and the Premier League. But also everybody is prepared to get the knives out. If you don't give Ethan a pathway or Max Dowman a pathway, how do you propose that the club promote this prodigious couple of youth players that we have in Ethan Nwaneri and maybe even Max Dowman, although it may be a bit early for that. It's not a bit early for the hype cycle to start, such that they do have a path. We can develop their talent, but the standards FC demands, aren't dropped, and we can go fight for all the cups we're expected to.
It's about balance for me. If these players are as talented as we think they are, and the management believe that they're as talented as everybody suggests, then there's no reason why they can't be part of a team that is successful and part of a group that is successful. But it's all about the balance that you have around them. So there's no point in throwing Ethan Nwaneri in and making 7 or 8 changes elsewhere in the team, because then you're relying on him to kind of carry the team rather than having him in the side as maybe a co-star and someone that, gets the opportunity to shine, but with all the right tools around him. So that's my big thing. I think in the cup competitions where we've gone wrong at times is that we've played the odd, young player that's coming through, but then we've also done that alongside some other heavy rotation that has weakened us on the whole. So I think it's about finding that balance between giving them the minutes they want, but also making sure when you do give them those minutes that they've got the right players around them. If Nwaneri, for instance, plays in Odegaard's position, let him play there with Saka to his right and with Ben White coming up on the right-hand side to support him, with, whoever it is, Thomas Partey maybe sitting at the base of midfield, and with Declan Rice assisting him in there. There's no point in putting him in there and making 3 or 4 changes in his vicinity, because then you can't expect him to provide the optimum level of performance. So balance is the key word for me there. These players are good enough to play and good enough to feature and good enough to be used, but you've got to put them in an environment where they can succeed.
It's a really interesting point, right? Because if you look at when Ethan has played 8, for example, I don't think he's looked brilliant at 8 yet at Arsenal, but he's also played 8 with Sterling to his right and Partey at right back and Marino at striker and Leo at left, and you say, he hasn't looked brilliant. It's like, well, I got news for you. We don't look brilliant when we try to do that in general. So, yeah, I mean, Clive, Max is here. He's a player we don't want to lose, and there is a vicious competition happening at that level of football for talent, as we saw 2 of our academy players leave for Manchester United this past year. Ethan is here, and he's going to continue to knock on the door. How on earth do you balance this? The need to win everything with the need to platform young players. Both are twin priorities that we have to master.
Yeah, I honestly don't worry about this.
Leave it to me.
Particularly in the era of 5 substitutions, I don't worry about it at all, particularly when we just watched our right-sided player get his hamstring ripped off and we missed him for over 100 days. I don't worry about this. I worry about freshness and health at the key parts of the season. I think it's important that we got control of Ethan's minutes while he was still developing physically. And the type of 80 is interesting that you say that. You say he hasn't looked great at that situation. I think it's hard for us to imagine anybody else other than Martin Odegaard in that position. So we all take mental Polaroids of what that position looks like and how it's played stylistically. And Martin Odegaard has had a tough year this year, but let's be honest, when he plays, we play through him in all aspects of what we do. And that's a massive accountability role. We cannot expect a 17, 18-year-old to have that same level of accountability and understand what to do when he's off the ball, understand how to stay engaged and present in the moment so he can run the team. He doesn't feel emboldened yet, but he will do in time. So what you have to look at now is his absolute talent. And his talent, I think, is almost going under the radar. You know, I really do. What he's done is only Michael Owen and Wayne Rooney have done it previously from a goal-scoring perspective at that age. Right, and they are well known in this country. So I think he's doing fine and he's developing fine, and we just have to allow him to go that way. When he hits, like he did versus Leicester, we will not be able to see anything else. Right, so he has got that sort of style. He won't be a tippy-tap player that has 58 touches, going 40 going backwards and 3 going sideways. No. He's getting it. He's going. He's banging it. He's making things happen, last action stuff, explosive stuff. It's a different style. And as soon as he feels emboldened to do it, I think he will. If you compare him to Miles now, mate, none of that. I'm emboldened. I was emboldened when I was on the bench getting booked against Man City. I was ready to go. Do you see what I mean? Different personality, different stages of his emotional development. Just a different person, right? So, but when Ethan gets his time, I think it's going to be very, very, very special. And we'll almost see it more than we do Miles, because we'll see it on the stat sheet, on goals and assists, and that will really make an impact to all of us.
Yep, I think that's right. The only thing I'd add is just, this is where it gets tricky, because we're linked with Leroy Sané, for example. And if you really want to be serious about winning everything, and you buy a striker, and you buy a left winger, and you're looking, how can we get even stronger, be even surer of our chance to do everything we need to, and make sure Bukayo Saka's not overplayed, or he's not playing the last 20 minutes of games when he's clearly out of juice? Maybe you go get Leroy Sané, and you have a player who's been at the top of the game, who's just come off a pretty strong season, and he can be the alternative to Saka. And if you make that decision, it is an aggressive decision that shows real ambition and very clearly makes it harder for Ethan to fight his way through. So these are the kind of decisions the club has to make. Clive, I can hear that you've got reservations about that analysis, so I'm just going to let you jump back in and share.
Well, I'm sure I was going to let Harry have a go. But no, I just think when we get linked to somebody, I almost think it's good, because we need a winger. We all agree that we need a wide player. Some of us would say 2, right? So when we're linked to, I've seen that in the last day or 2, Sane, Semenyo. There was another player today linked alongside Morgan Rodgers from from Feyenoord, I think. We're going to get linked to everybody, but we need another wide player, in my opinion. We need a striker. Yeah, we know we're getting a centre mid. We need a backup goalkeeper, and that's what we need. That's the minimum. Potentially, we need a right-footed defender. Potentially, So this is, for me, all these links are good. I don't want to be like a negative, you know what I mean, Elliot? Like, what does it mean for this person, that player? I tell you, the big negative, and I said it last week, the negative is, look at the bench for PSG at home. And that's the negative.
Yeah, that can't happen again.
That can't happen again.
No, you can't. You can't get to the sharp end of the season, and you got guys like Butler and Ege playing minutes when they don't, when they're about to be let go on a free.
It can't happen again. We need options. We need to change this narrative about Arsenal. We had a centre mid up front, and we were arguing whether he's good enough to play up front. He should be there.
Right, exactly.
The fact he did what he did was magnificent, right? So, but I just want the conversation to change, really.
No, I think you're exactly right. And I think we can look at Miles Lewis-Skelly, by the way. Miles Lewis-Skelly going into last season would have been, what, fourth choice left back? Maybe. I mean, Calafiori, maybe Urian Timber, maybe Zinchenko, maybe Kieran Tierney. All are players that potentially could have been thought of ahead of Kivior. Yeah. I mean, there's Tomiyasu. All players that could have been thought of as being ahead of Mazzuchelli in a position that isn't his at youth level. He got a chance to play there a bit, and that was that. I'm too good to take me out of this team. Okay? And that's the thing about youth players. You don't necessarily plan for them. They force your hand with how good they can be. And that's how you want it to go, because that's the only way you know you have a star on your hands. If they force you to play them, not that you gave them minutes. Here, have some minutes. They force you to play them, and that's what we've seen from all the really star young players that have come through at Arsenal, whether it was Cesc Fabregas or Jack Wilshere or Saka or Miles Lewis-Skelly. Okay, we're bogging down. So let's move on. Harry, let's get fun here for a second. Let's do some transfer nonsense. I want you to rank these options from the one you'd most like to the one you'd least like. Now, that doesn't mean you don't like the one you least like, but I want you to rank these options for the summer. Sesko+Sane, Gyokeres+Semenyo, Watkins+Rodrygo.
This
First,
is tough.
second, third.
This is tough. It's tough. I love it. And of course, that's not the way the world works, Elliot. If I say someone's in third place, it means I hate them and I never want to see them anywhere near
waffles
Arsenal
and
Football
pancakes.
Club.
If I say I like waffles, it means I hate pancakes. That's the deal. Don't worry. I'll make sure to stick the boot in when you're done.
Okay, I think this is going to be slightly unpopular, but I'll do it in reverse order then.
Okay.
So I'll go Sesko+Sane in third place. I will go Gyokeres+Semenyo in second place. And first place, and this will probably surprise people, I would go Watkins and Rodrygo. Now, a little bit of an explanation as to why I've gone that way. So, first of all, I don't want to see us sign Leroy Sané. Unless Arsenal have got two attackers in already, and this would be a player coming in as a third option that we're taking very little risk around, then I don't want to see it happen. We've been scarred by Willian and Raheem Sterling, and Leroy Sané's career feels as though it's heading in the same direction. I watched some of the Nations League game last night. I wasn't impressed at all. And
were you impressed by Florian Wirtz by any chance? Because I'm real scared of him.
Yeah, he's not a bad player at all, is he? So look, just because Sané's in that pairing, it makes me put that pairing at the bottom. Gyokeres, for me, is probably the more ready of the two strikers that we've been really heavily linked with. I know that for Arsenal and from the club's perspective, Sesko might feel like a better investment and a longer-term project and all the rest of it, but I want us to win now. I want us to sign a player for tomorrow, not next season and the season after that. And I'm not even convinced that Sesko would take Kai Havertz's position initially in the team. So I've got my reservations about that. Gyokeres feels like he could do it, and I really like Semenyo as well. So those two come in at second for me. The reason I've gone Watkins and Rodrygo as number one is because I feel like I'm more interested in bringing in top quality than I am fussed about the profile of the player. So Rodrygo to me is by far and away the standout wide option that we could bring in. Now, I know it's going to be difficult to do financially and all the rest of it, but this is, we're living in a fantasy world here. We can do what we want. Rodrygo, for me, would really move the needle in a way that I don't think any of the other wide options definitely will. It's not to say they can't, but I want to bet on sure things now. I'm at a stage where we've made progress. We're here. We're knocking on the door, but I want sure things now. And I think that Watkins, as much as that's not a long-term signing either, and as much as people will have reservations around him, it's probably going to cost half of what Sesko or Gyokeres would cost, but I wouldn't say he's half as likely to contribute and to impact Arsenal in that final third. So I'm going to go with those two as my first choice because, quite frankly, I'm not totally convinced by any of the striking options that are available to us. Isak is the one, but that's not going to happen. We're not going to be able to get that deal done. And if I'm not totally convinced about any of them, I'm going to bet on the sure thing, and having Rodrygo in that pair for me makes that the one to go for.
Yeah, I'm surprised you didn't pick Sesko+Rodrygo as your top option. But otherwise, I agree with a lot of your logic there.
Oh, could I do that? I thought I had to pick a
you
midfielder.
can't.
There you
Just
go.
What I do, Harry,
What Clive does.
I ignore the question and do what I normally do.
I'll learn that
this
for
one,
next
Clive,
time.
This will be more fun if you stick to the format. So don't pick like Bradley Barcola or something. Although, yes, please. Could we unsettle him? What about those three options, Clive? Because I think Harry took that question in a really intelligent way, which is not so much the names, but what we're trying to accomplish this summer with how we add. So how would you rank it? Sesko+Sane, Gyokeres+Semenyo, Watkins+Rodrygo.
Harry's done the question really well, so
Yep.
I won't answer it. So basically,
Yeah, so just
I'll
talk
answer it
about whatever you
slightly
want.
differently.
How's the weather in London?
Well, what are we trying to solve tactically from the team? Right, so that's how I look at it. What are we trying to solve? Are we dynamic enough? Do we have enough transition speed? Are we direct enough? Right, so do we play the right pass at the right time when it's on offer, or do we wait till we get into attacking shape? Can we speed up slightly? Do we have enough running behind speed? Generally, and since Saka's had his hamstring, he's not doing it so much. Martinelli does until he gets tired, right? So do we have enough people to stretch the pitch? So I look at things like that and say, so when I see people that can move, that are quite dynamic, that can threaten the back line, that's when I get interested. I do think Sesko is my sort of favoured centre forward, although I do think that's not to snoop my nose at Gyokeres, because he is someone that's had 1 million goal contributions. Who am I to snoop my nose at him? However, I don't think he's any more ready than, say, a Sesko would be. The only reason that people say that, because he's a bit older, a bit more experienced. The risk is still the same. So while you're risking it, I risk it with somebody younger, that's faster, that's maybe more aligned to our game. So I would spend the extra 10 mil, whatever it costs, to get somebody who I think could take Kai Havertz out in time, and he could be the tip of our arrow, and that's who we are, right? So I would go there. On the left, on the wing, I'll be honest with you guys, hardly any of them have got me convinced. So centre forward, I'm not worried about him, because we've got Kai Havertz here. We can bring them in, and we need to find 15 goals, so I'm not concerned. We're going to find it from either one of them. But the left winger, we ask a lot of our left wingers. We ask them to track in a 4-4-2 off the ball. We ask them to run in behind. We ask them to receive the ball. We overfeed them consistently. We overfeed them. And we just expect them to beat their man. And when they don't, we're having YouTubes about them. So why has Martinelli lost his dribbling skills? Why have we not got enough Mavericks? Why have we not got enough one-on-one merchants? We ask a lot of our wide men. And so that, for me, is a much harder choice. And I don't know who it is. I've gone through all of them. If anything, probably the one that's safe. There's a couple of in the Premier League for me. With 3 Premier League players, and people won't agree the profiles, but I'll just mention them anyway because I know them, right? So Eze's one to play off the left side. Again, stylistically it's different, and if you've got a fast centre forward, it can work. Similar to what Mateta is, fast stretches, can hold up, and Eze plays off. Anthony Gordon really impressed me when Newcastle came down in this last game. I know he gave up the goal, but mate, running in behind Ben White, he was a problem, and I thought he was really good. But if you're thinking profile-wise, I think we need somebody who can play both sides. Although Anthony Gordon can do that too, but he's also going to be expensive.
Semenyo.
Two-footedness. This is the thing I think we're missing. Two-footedness in our team. So someone can play both sides. That's how you make the money stretch. So yeah, that's where my head is. But I'm just not sure yet on that one. But Sesko, I'm a bit more sure about. Just my view anyway.
Well, I got to get this out. And I referenced Watkins in a positive way. Not I want Watkins, but just in a positive way on a prior podcast. And people got really upset about it. It lacks ambition. He's going to be 30. That's mid. We're not trying to be mid. Let me say this. We aren't mid. We are a season removed from 89 points and almost winning the league. And then despite an injury crisis this season, we were very close to getting to the mountaintop in the Champions League. We're very good. You know what we can't afford to do? We can't afford a Højlund. We can't afford a Xerxes. We can't afford an Nkunku. We can't afford to go to the continent and bring in a player for big money who doesn't add anything. And that's why we have to be really careful this window. I'm not saying go get Watkins, and I realize Watkins is not the right age profile and probably not the right top-end talent, but you know what he is? 13 to 15 Premier League goals. Nailed on. 6 to 10 assists. Nailed on. Nailed on. He's going to give you that. Does that make us better? Because I think it does. And if that frees you up the money to go try to get a Barcola or a Rodrygo, now you're talking. Because I think left wing is potentially an area we could strengthen more than center forward. Because I think if you have Watkins and Kai, you got a really good platoon. Now, for what it's worth, I'd rather have Sesko than Watkins. But if he's 80 million pounds and you can't go get a winger and he's the only guy we bring in and he's Højlund, you're dead. You're not stronger. And you go into the season, still a very good Arsenal, by the way, but you haven't achieved what you need to. So my point isn't go get Sesko, and my point isn't go get Watkins. But my point is we've kind of made it feel like we've got to go find a superstar to achieve our goals. And that is not the case. We need to just add consistent, predictable quality in the front line to achieve our goals. And so, Harry, I'll just finish by saying, to me, if you like Sesko, if you like Gyokeres, like that's fine. If you hate Watkins, also fine. But I don't think we want to necessarily try to shoot the moon at huge risk. If we can get guys that are going to give us 12 to 15 goals and 6 to 10 assists, how are you turning your nose up at that when our leading goal scorer this season had 9? So I don't know. I mean, I just think seeing how many transfers miss, especially strikers, should give us pause to just make sure if we're going for big quality at big money, they're players that we really feel confident will hit. A Rodrygo, a Barcola, guys I really feel confident will hit. If we're going for guys like Sesko or Gyokeres, we have to just price in the fact they may not hit. And then where are you? So that's the needle that the club has to thread this summer.
Yeah, if you go back over the last 5 seasons, as you said, Watkins, 14 goals. Then he had a bit of an off-season, 11. Then 15, 19, and 16. And in the last
assists,
3 seasons,
by the way.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
The last 3 seasons, he's got 6 assists, 15 assists, and then 8 assists. He's not
in our league in a club
exactly
competing for Champions League places.
And this was put to me. This was put to me the other day by a friend of mine when we were talking about it. He was looking at the numbers of Sesko and the numbers of Gyokeres, and I know the analysis we're doing is not solely based on the numbers in terms of their outputs, right? It's a bit deeper than that. But he said to me, "What's the exchange rate?" If you look at Victor Gyokeres getting 39 goals in the Portuguese top flight, what does the exchange rate look like? And what does that translate to, do you think, in the Premier League? I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be much more than the 16 goals that Ollie Watkins managed last season, when people were saying, by the way, that he had an off-season, that he was in and out of the team in the first half of the campaign with John Duran as well. So it's not
Harry,
that I don't...
if we bought Sesko for 80 million pounds and he gave us 16 goals, people would be saying we hit a home run. Now, to be fair, part of that is the trajectory. He's just on the up versus on the down, but yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And that's an important part as well. And again, we want to, as a football club, always look at the medium to long term as well when we're making these types of decisions. But I just think Watkins' price is going to dip even more in the summer. You mentioned Villa's PSR situation. You take into consideration his age. I'm just very much of the mindset this summer that we are so close, guys. And rather than thinking about that medium to the long term too much, I think you've got to consider it. But rather than looking at it too much and allowing that to kind of, create this culture whereby you're okay with kicking the can down the road, I feel like we've got to capitalize now. And if you spend 35, 40 million quid on a striker that might only serve you for 2 seasons, but in those 2 seasons you get over the line, for me, that is worth it. And every penny of that money would be well spent. So I think you've got to weigh up. And the exchange rate point is massive for me. Everyone's really convinced about Sesko, but his exchange rate, what would that be? He's got 13 Bundesliga goals. I know Leipzig haven't had a good campaign, but what does that translate to in the Premier League? That's something you've got to consider, I think.
Yep, it's all really well said. And I want to just clarify something so people don't hear the wrong things, because that can happen. I am not saying Ollie Watkins is the right signing for Arsenal. I'm making a comparison about more predictable, decently high-end output at a reasonable price versus trying to shoot the moon with the downside risk, right? What are the error bars? That's all I'm saying. You can take the names off the players. It's more of a high-level concept. We don't want to bog down too much, Clive. Final words here.
It's classic mismanagement, isn't it? It's risk management. It comes
Risk
from your
management,
decisioning. And how do they mitigate risk? They mitigate risk by scouting them for about 2 years. That's how they do it, didn't they? Different scenarios by talking to people, what they're like in training, what their characters like, etc., etc. Will they be happy on the bench? How do they behave there on the bench? Do they bring their teammates along with them? That creates the whole picture, right? And we just watch the games, right? And think, oh, he can jump a bit high, he kicks the ball a bit hard, and Ollie Watkins runs in behind. I'll tell you now, Arsenal Football Club will be better for any one of them. Honestly, the centre forward, I think it's a really easy discussion. How you laid it out beautifully. It's a really easy discussion, and I would not worry about any of them because we have somebody else. So the risk is almost mitigated by our squad and our solid play style. The left wing option now, someone needs to work on me because I'm not convinced by any of them. Right? So I'm just not. So yeah, that's where my brain is at. That's my worry. It's not really a centre forward.
Yeah, I think we've got a bunch of fun questions coming up, including one about Kai, but I think it feels, and I like to go by feel on the podcast, it feels like people are thinking, how do I shave my privates better? And I don't know if that's what people are thinking. I know Harry was. So let me tell you how you do it. You do it with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, and now if you're in the UK, EU, or Australia, it's available in the White Hot Special Edition colorway. Yeah, I mean, so if you're in the US, you can't get the White Hot Special Edition colorway, but you can get the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra. If you're everywhere else, you get the White Hot Special Edition colorway. Look, there's a new thing about this trimmer, by the way. It comes with a foil blade now, so you can go completely smooth. So I had the original one. I loved it. The foil blade lets you go smoother if that's your thing. I actually don't use the foil blade. If you want to know more specifics or details about how I shave my privates, get in touch. That's never, ever happening. Look, it reduces the risk of nicks, cuts, and irritation. It has an insanely long battery life. I really mean this. I put that thing in the shower. I probably use it once or twice a week, and it's months before I have to charge it again. It's great for a wet, dry shave. It is a perfect purpose-built body trimmer. If you do that, then use this. I mean, it's that simple. And by the way, they have just great products. Their quality is very good. So if you want their face shaver or their beard hedger, Harry, I'm telling you, it's the way to go. So get the, that's it. White Hot look, smooth results. The White Hot 5.0 Ultra brings the heat without cooking your skin. It's sleek, easy to use, and way less terrifying than whatever you were using before, especially if you were using scissors. Use code ArsenalVision for 15% off your entire order at manscaped.com. That's 15% off with code ArsenalVision at manscaped.com. Stay cool, stay smooth, and leave the burns to the sun. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Okay. Clive, question number 5 is, and I have changed the order from what I put in the little chat window just to throw a wrench in the plans of these guests who are plotting and planning their answers.
I can't even see the questions, man.
Oh, there you go.
So,
even better.
I don't need to see them anyway.
I would have gotten away from it too if it wasn't for you meddling kids. Question number 5. Clive, is Kai being overlooked? Pictures going on social media today of his body being quite developed muscularly. He looks fit.
Ooh.
I think he is a player who has been among our best when fit since arriving. Maybe not since arriving. All right, let me change that. Since about January of the season before last, he was looking like one of our best and most important players. And now we're acting sort of like if we don't get the striker right, we don't have a striker, period. And I just think Kai's being overlooked. Do you agree?
Not overlooked by me, mate. But so my mentions, there they go. Boom. So yeah. So my worry is the feedback we get. We get called Netflix FC, all the rest of it, and people say, "Have Arsenal peaked?" And during that peak of the 18-game run, Kai Havertz was at our centre forward, and to me, that's probably one of the best versions of Arsenal I've seen. And so I'm quite comfortable with him there, but I need to make sure we got some depth, so he doesn't rip his hamstring off his bone, right? So, and that's the key thing, and the same for our wide men as well. So, I think he's a really important player tactically for us. I think he almost epitomises what the manager wants in a footballer. Or does any job you ask him to do with everything he's got. So yeah, I don't worry about him. He's more or less some of the players around him and our creative 10, shall we say, and some of our wide options, some depth there. That's where my worry is, Elliot. So for me, yeah, he allows us to take risks we want to take on board. And so yeah, no problem for me, mate.
Yeah, I just think he's really, really good. And if he's the striker we have starting up front for Arsenal next season for 60% of the games, I'm not worried. I'm not worried at all. Harry, I don't want to pretend that Kai is one of the great strikers in the world, but I would also suggest that list is shorter than it sometimes has been in the history of football. You know, if you started to say, name all the definitely, clearly super elite strikers in world football, that's going to be a really short segment of this podcast. So is Kai being overlooked? Has absence made the heart grow fungus?
I think for a lot of people, you know, they didn't want him in the first place. And because of that, they've been ready and waiting in the wings to pounce on any mistake he makes, any missed chance. And often he becomes the scapegoat. And it's not fair, because Kai Havertz has contributed in the last 2 seasons to this football team as much as anybody else has. And I love so much about him. I think he's got a great work ethic. I think he helps us at both ends of the pitch when we're defending or attacking set pieces. His attitude is spot on. And look at the condition he's in. This guy's been out with a hamstring injury, and rather than sitting around and feeling sorry for himself while working on that injury, he has built himself up like an absolute tank. And I can't wait to see what this, you know, even better version of Kai Havertz is going to look like, because, you know, at times he looks a little bit gangly and he looks a little bit awkward, but if he's got that greater physical upper body strength, then there's no reason why he can't be even more of a handful. I like his attitude. I like the way he gets stuck into people. I like the way that, you know, he was maybe perceived as a bit of a soft touch before he came to Arsenal, and I think he's proved everybody wrong on that. I think he's a fantastic player. And as I say, when we're talking about all the centre-forward options, not to go back to that point, there's not definitive evidence that those guys that we're talking about are better than him. So why are we overlooking him? It's about depth. It's about having options. If there's one thing we should have learned from last season, it's that you cannot rely on one player in any given position. Maybe not even 2. So bring in the depth, but it doesn't have to be, again, it goes back to, you know, the binary nature of football nowadays. It doesn't have to be you're bringing in a centre-forward because Kai Havertz is rubbish. And if he's great, then why do you need one? You don't need to look at it that way. This would be an addition to the group, an addition to the squad. And I think Kai Havertz's importance is going to be on display and on show again next season.
Yeah. I mean, look, if you just look at non-penalty expected goals per 90, I know people love that stuff. Non-penalty expected goals per 90. In the Premier League this season, of players that started more than 15 games, he's 7th in the league. That's not for strikers. It's for all players. Okay? Last season, you know, he was more like, 15th? So one of the top 15 in output. And you'd say, oh, but he's not a finisher. Well, last season he beat his expected goals. My point isn't to try to gaslight you into thinking Kai Havertz is one of the best strikers in the world. But he is a good, high-quality player who gives us all kinds of important contribution all over the pitch. Would people like him to be more clinical? Sure. Would you like him to kick the ball a little harder sometimes? Sure. And that's why we're going to go get a striker. So we have options. But I think he's overlooked, and I think his return is important. I think we kind of forgot just how important he was when we were playing like the best team in England and maybe one of the best teams in the world. So, okay, let's go to question number 6. Clive, does Liverpool's or City's business so far worry you? Or rumored business, I should say, because it isn't, you know, a lot of it's not done yet.
I find it interesting. You know, if Liverpool get the 2 young fullbacks and Verts, I'm not good at 10s, Elliot. You know I'm like with number 10s. I don't see him, those little fancy Dan ones. I don't see him so clearly. Hey, you got to hold your hand up, right? I don't see him so clearly.
Leave those to me.
Yeah.
Love them all.
When you do a podcast with Tim and Elliot, Harry, mate, they love their 10s. Mate, I'm not.
I'd have Ryan Cherky in our squad tomorrow, let me tell you. Don't care who has to get bumped.
I can see Morgan Rodgers clearly. You know, so I can see that type of 10 clearly. That's the sort of type I like. So I like Liverpool on paper look interesting, right? So they're going to have 2 bombing fullbacks. Verts maybe off the left with a centre forward, maybe Gakpo or somebody holding that central position, and Salah tucked inside. So they're back to their 5 again with the fullbacks being on the outside, back to Klopp's earlier team, right? So where it was Trent and Robertson high up, and Jordan Henderson and Wijnaldum doing all the doggy work, working behind them. You can see that, that'd be quite nice. But again, with my head, I'm thinking, yeah, mate, space time, those fullbacks, I'll take you there. You know, let's go there, right? Let's keep our wingers high and wide and push you back. There's always a weakness in any tactical system. City, the Turkey one, City, and is it Reinders?
Reinders,
yeah, he's a nice player. I like him. You know, nice
like
player. Yeah.
But especially Turkey.
Yeah, the Turkey, he's not new, is he? He's been around since he was 17, and he's finally got his head right. I did hear a podcast yesterday talking about the financial issues in France with the DAZN TV deal. There could be some bargains coming out of France. The Lyon obviously got their star player. They need to move him. Let's see what the price is eventually. If they do move him, he may not be as cheap as what people are seeing right now.
Because 30 million would be insane for that talent level. I mean, I think
that's been
21 and oof.
I think it's been rubbish, but if they get him, fine. But we've got lefties, right? So we've got somebody there already, and I'm prepared to wait for Ethan. I'm sorry, I am. So yeah, you look at it. You look at what City did in January. You say, yeah, they're rebuilding. Let's hope the charge sheet is all right? So because they're rebuilding. So and they are going to renew, and what they're doing in the coaching staff is equally as interesting. So they're going again. And I love it, mate. Absolutely love it. I'm not scared of it. As long as our own people, our own club are listening and we do our work.
I got all the fear you need right here.
But we should be excited, shouldn't we? We want to be excited by this. We want to, because it pushes us on. If we want to be fair to middling, then that's okay. People end up losing jobs, right? That's how it works. If you don't improve, your jobs are at risk. And so we have to improve. So I think it'll push us on, hopefully. What
about you, Harry? You worried about it?
A little bit in the sense of it feels like everybody else is moving and we're not right now. And I know that because we're kind of living and breathing the whole Arsenal thing, we kind of follow every little update and it doesn't feel like we've had too many significant ones at this stage. And I have to keep sort of reminding myself that it's only June the 5th and there's no reason to be too stressed out or too nervous about it all. But I think Clive's point about renewal, especially at Manchester City, I think is really, really interesting. And I think for a long time, look, put the 115 charges and all the rest of that to one side for a minute, because, we don't know what the outcome of that's going to be. And there's no point in really speculating over it. But you think about the way that they've tried to renew. They've kept Pep Guardiola, as you say. They've given him money to go out and sort of identify players along with his staff that he think is right. But the most interesting thing for me, as Clive touched on, is that they've brought in Pep Lijnders, who was Jurgen Klopp's assistant for such a long time. Pep Guardiola went toe-to-toe with Jurgen Klopp for so many seasons, and they were really kind of battling it out. And although, we weren't there at that point, it does feel like that was maybe one of the highest standards of football that we've seen in the Premier League era. I know you can go back to the Arsenal Man United days and you can talk about Needle and all the rest of it. And that propped that rivalry up for sure. And it was a great rivalry. But since then, I don't think we've had anything like that Man City-Liverpool rivalry in terms of quality. Maybe not Needle, maybe not all the rest of it, but the quality was there.
We had teams going 97, 96 points for a title, 100 to 98 and stuff. It's crazy
Exactly.
stuff.
Unbelievable stuff. And then, so what does Pep Guardiola do? He goes, what have I had the most trouble dealing with over the last few seasons? What's been my biggest challenge? My biggest challenge has been Liverpool. I can't get Jurgen Klopp to come in and bring me some insight and bring me some, additional knowledge and bring in some more expertise. I'll go and get his right-hand man. I just think that's such a clever bit of recruitment from Manchester City. And we're talking about all the players they're going to sign on the pitch. I just think that, for me, is a top quality bit of business.
Clive?
Totally agree, Harry. And I remember listening to some Liverpool stuff when Klopp and Lijnders were going at it, because it was Lijnders that made them invert Trent. Remember, they're having a tough time and they inverted Trent and they started to go well. And so there's been a philosophy challenge between the two of them. And in the end, they separated and he went his way, etc. So he's now going to Pep and they have got similar philosophies. And I think this is such an interesting move. It refreshes up the dressing room. I like it. I don't like it, but I like it. You know what I mean? Because that's what you do in football clubs. You have to renew your people to keep it fresh, right? It's very important.
I think it's a little simpler than this. I think Pep is an egomaniac and he only wants to hire people who have the same name as him. I would just say this about being scared by the business. I think City and Liverpool both have a similarity in this respect. These signings are good and scary signings. Wirtz is the best player that will move this summer, full stop. He's that good. Turkey and Rangers are the De Bruyne and Gundogan for the next era. That's what they're planning. And they are going to lay on a mountain of chances for Erling Haaland. But that only works, especially given their off-the-ball capabilities, if Rodgers back to Ballon d'Or level. And similarly, Wirtz could be amazing. Frimpong could be amazing. Karetsas could be amazing. Liverpool only go as far as whether Salah and Van Dijk still have an elite season in the tank. So I feel like City and Liverpool are both in a similar position in that if Rodri is Ballon d'Or level and Salah and Van Dijk have elite performance still in them, those teams are going to hit 90 points again, and we're going to have to go above that. If Rodri can't catch the level he was shooting for, if Salah and Van Dijk do start to fade a bit, signings aren't going to make up for that. And both of those teams are probably going to be more like lower 80s points again. So that's how I see it. I still see those teams as being defined by their key existing players in terms of where they can go. Let's move on to another. Oh, yeah, Harry,
I was just going to say, does that kind of shine a light, though, on what the market looks like at the moment generally? Because as much as I like Reinders, for example, I've watched loads of him in Serie A. I think he's a really good player. I think he's got a lot about him. But I wouldn't look at him as a football club and say he's a sure thing. No. I feel like we're in a world right now where we're looking at the market and we're sitting there as Arsenal fans going, we need to get X player because he's a sure thing. But those players just aren't available. And so there's an element of risk and there's a gamble that you need to take, whoever you are, even if you're Man City, even if you're Liverpool, whether you're Arsenal, whoever you are. And I think it's just really, really interesting. Like, because you mentioned the Liverpool signings there, and that got me thinking. Wirtz, I think, is fantastic. Frimpong, I think, is good. But do I think he's an upgrade on Trent Alexander-Arnold? I'm not 100% sure.
No.
Probably not. Gyokeres, I like him. I've seen him on a few occasions live and thought he was pretty impressive. But do I fear him the way I used to fear a peak Andy Robertson? Probably not. So this is where everybody is having to take similar steps, right? Everybody's having to roll the dice on players that maybe aren't quite at that level, but they hope will get there. And so maybe that should make us feel calmer in the way that we're looking at our transfer window and our potential business and activity.
Well said. Clive, let's bog down here. What do you want to say?
Well, I have to ask you something. Because, if the Wirtz price could be like 130 million, I have to ask you, because in the time I've seen him, when I watch him play for Germany, I look at him and Musiala and I think that Musiala's good. Wirtz is all right. 130 million. Do you guys think he's that good? I'm asking.
Yeah.
I mean,
I do.
I'm not there, but you tell me.
Look, systems are tough, right? Because we think about where would he play in our system and what would his role be. We have Declan Rice playing left 8, for example. If you thought Declan Rice could be a 6 and you put Wirtz in our left 8, you are cooking not with gas, you're cooking with flamethrowers. He could be the false 9 for Liverpool if they want to really play him almost like a more skillful Firmino and let him drop in, and maybe they want to go 4-2-4 more. And Clive, I think from a pure talent standpoint, from a player who can manipulate the ball any way he wants, in between the lines, left side, right side, lay on final balls, and add goal scoring to his game, I don't think there's a player of his caliber in the world in the position he plays. And that's the kind of thing that you do spend 130 million on. I mean, we did it with Rice 2 summers ago. Rice is a player who has flaws. We talk about Rice like he's flawless. He's not flawless, but he does some things at a level no other player in his position can do in world football, and he can transform a midfield through his elite skills that no one can match. And so, Harry, I see Wirtz as having that kind of ceiling to transform certain zones of the pitch. But just to be clear, because I don't want to undermine my earlier point, I'm not sure he can be Salah or Van Dijk influential. You're talking about 2 of the best players in the history of English football. So to me, they still rise and fall with what those players do. But do you agree with my appraisal of Wirtz's elite talent, or do you think it's overstated?
I think he's an elite talent. I'm just not sure that there is room for that type of player anymore in the really top level teams in the Premier League. I think what PSG have shown us this season is that talent trumps everything. And if you've got players that can be disciplined and get into a shape and do the things that their coach asks out of possession, but then can break free of the mold and go and do those magical things and express themselves, that's the winning combination, right? But I just look at Liverpool and I look at the makeup of their midfield over the last few years, and it's been about work rate, and it's been about having players that are hybrids between being those workhorses, but also being able to offer something. Look, I think Wirtz has got the talent. Whether he can flip mode and flip the switch and become the kind of defensive monster that Liverpool will want him to be, that's where my reservation comes. And if you play with a 4-3-3, then if he's not doing that and he's part of the midfield three, he's a bit of a passenger. And if he goes into the front three, he doesn't give you any width because he wants to operate in the more central area. So I don't doubt his talent. I don't dispute that for a second, but I question the fit. And that's a problem I have with all number 10s right now. I don't know how they fit.
Clive, I know you want to come in.
That's exactly why I asked the question, because that's exactly where I was. And I'd put him as a left winger, tucking in with Gyokeres outside him. That already tells me I'm making adjustments for him. Do you see what I mean? And that means
Clive, I don't like this. I don't like that if he's going to play left wing for them. I don't like the spend. I think that is an overpay.
It's as a left wing, though. You know what I mean by left wing? You start there, you don't stay there. You roll inside.
But if they plan to, I mean, it could be that they want Sesko+Sane to not be a starter for them, and he's going to take that position. I could see that. But let me make this point because I think it's important. Even the best players need to be platformed in the right way. Declan Rice is sensational, but we all agree we need a 6. We all agree we need a 6, and a lot of people have come around to the idea that he may not be it, and that's why we're going for Zubimendi. If their plan is to try to roll Gravenberch out there 60 times next season to play 6, and they're going to play Wirtz in the middle with McAllister and Sesko+Sane, teams are going to figure them out. They need a 6. They need a 6. I think he's going to play false 9. I really do, or one of those two 8s. But if they're going to play him at left wing, no, he's not a 130 million pound left winger in my mind. By the way, he was 21 this season, so just gone 22. I'll tell you this though, maybe City are smart. Maybe City are going, instead of 130 million on Wirtz, we'll spend 30 million on Cherki. Because if what you really want is someone who operates in the pockets of space on the edge of the final third and can lay on chances, Cherki can lay on chances like nobody's business. He's also 21. Now, he was doing it in France, not the Bundesliga, but actually French talent has tended to translate better to the Premier League in some instances than Bundesliga talent. Guys, this stuff is hard, and even the biggest transfers miss. I don't think I can see Wirtz missing, but Wirtz doesn't solve what I regard as one of the issues for Liverpool, which is 6. I think they need an elite 6, which is why they wanted Zubimendi, by the way, and didn't get him. Let's move on from this. Look, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I will tell you, though, Cherki, that's my kind of player. And I know some attitude questions and fitness questions, but if he puts it all together, Holland is going to score 50 goals next season, and that's scary, and we don't want that. Okay, let's do this one quickly, because I think the answer here is no, but maybe you could do it with one word or less. Harry, question number 7. Can any club challenge the big 3 next season? Is any club potentially going to break in City, Liverpool, Arsenal from anybody else?
For me, no. A simple answer on that very, very quickly. I don't think that Chelsea are quite there yet. I don't think that Tottenham are going to get there anytime soon. I don't think that Manchester United's business is particularly inspiring. I know they're getting excited as a fan base, because they're making signings, but I feel like that they're going down a slightly wrong path in terms of who they're after and how they're trying to build. It doesn't feel sustainable to me, and it doesn't feel a good use of their money. So yeah, short answer, not really. I think Arsenal, Liverpool, and City, in terms of A, what they have in their squads already, but B, in terms of the way they operate as football clubs, are just on a different level at the moment to pretty much everyone else in the league.
I would have put Newcastle or Chelsea as the 2 that could potentially do it, and I don't think they're that close, but with Champions League next season, I don't think their squads are ready for that, so I would say no to that. Clive, let me give you question number 8. Thoughts on Gabby's new contract? It looks like Gabriel Magalhaes is getting a new contract. Once upon a time, there were thoughts he might be going to Saudi Arabia. I think he is one of the 4 or 5 best center backs in world football, and one of the other ones is at Arsenal. And however much we want to be like, oh, Mikel likes defensive football, blah, 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 having 2 of the best center backs in world football is way better than watching Mustafi and Socrates at the back. No offense to the fine people of Greece, Harry. And I would simply say, Clive, that this is a critical part of who we are, our identity. I said last season, he is the heart of our squad, and you can't live without a heart. I took anatomy in college. So what do you think?
So see what happens, Harry, on this podcast. Elliot asks a question, then answers it fully, and then says, what do you think? And I'm going to say, on the previous question, when you were talking about who's going to be in the top, who's going to be the top 3, hold on a second, hold on, not finished. I was going to say, if you've asked me, I'd say the reason why we're going to be in that top end of the pitch, because of people like Gabriel re-signing him. Because they immediately tell you where you're going to finish. Because if we can be the best defence again, we're going to be in that top 3. And then our ceiling is controlled by what we do in attack. I think it's a massively important player for the dressing room. I think he is the defensive leader of our team, one of our captains. And I really feel that if Arsenal treat him right, which they should do, this contract renewal, I think it will lead to Saliba. I think it will lead to Saka. I think it will lead to all the things that we want to see happen. I think it's very important you treat people who deserve that pay rise. And he definitely does, because he was the first one to sign last time, and he's not being paid appropriately for the role he now has in our squad. So, huge moment this is. I'm glad it's being done, and he's getting rewarded. And I'm hoping all his mates follow that we want to sign. Right, so that's where I am.
Okay, I like it. Harry, do you want to just weigh in quickly on Gabby, or should we move to question number 9?
Just very, very, very quickly. I think the thing for me is not like Gabby's a great player. You guys have covered that. We don't need to go over that again. But it's what it tells me about how the squad are feeling about where this project is. I know at the end of the season, everybody was going, oh, are we ever going to get there? And there was that feeling again of frustration. But I think when your best players are willing to put pen to paper again, it tells you that actually within the camp, everybody's still pretty confident that this thing is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, well said. Okay, let's move on to question number 9. Clive, what are your thoughts on Arsenal's weird player of the season voting? So we know number 3 and number 2. 3 is Raya, 2 is Saka, which means 1 is probably going to be Gabby or Timber or Rice. But 2 of those 3 will not even be in the top 3, just as Saka wasn't in the top 3 last season. I don't know that this matters, but I know people took it very seriously last season when Saka wasn't in the top 3, and it does drive a lot of sort of debate and engagement. I can give you a really nerdy thought on this in a minute, but do you have any strong takes or even any reaction to player season voting in one of Timber, Gabby, and Rice? 2 of those guys not even making the top 3?
Yeah, people have their choices, right? Our memories tend to be quite short. If it was me, I'd vote for Saka every single year, right? I'd vote for him next year as well before he even starts, because I think he's that important to how we play, and maybe that's a problem to how we play, right? So, and we've grown accustomed to him, hence he wasn't in the top 3. It looks like it's going to be Declan Rice, if I make a guess, Elliot. And let's be honest, his end of season form was stunning, right? He gave us the highlight of the season. Why wouldn't he be player of the season? What he did against Madrid, I'm never going to forget. Right? That's simple as that. And that is the highest level of football there is, right? So yeah, I don't look at it too deeply. I think far more important we keep all those players. That's the most important thing, because they represent where we all want to go, right? So that's where my brain is.
Yeah. What about you, Harry?
I'm a little bit surprised by it, but is it that big of a deal? I'm not sure that it is. I think we all have our views and have our opinions, and I think the fact that we can make a case for multiple players shows you that even with all the disappointment at the end of the campaign, we actually had an okay season again. For me, if I was writing down my list of Arsenal's player of the season, it would be Big Gabby, it would be Jurriën Timber, I'd probably have David Raya in there, and I'd probably put Thomas Partey in there as well. Now, it looks like only one of those players I've mentioned, well, only one of them is in the list so far, which means there's only space for one more, and it's probably going to be Declan Rice, as you guys say. I think Rice deserves to be in there based on his second half of the season, but I don't think he was quite there in the first half of the campaign. So for me, there's players that should be there that aren't, but am I going to read into it too much and make too much of a big deal? No, but I guess we all have our opinions, don't we?
Do you want my nerdy take?
Let's get it.
The problem with this is why ranked choice voting works. Think about how it works mathematically, right?
This is really nerdy.
A lot of people want Rice as their number 1, so they vote for Declan Rice. A lot of people want Timber, so they vote for Timber. A lot of people want Gabby, so they vote for Gabby. People want Raya, they vote for Raya, right? And what happens is, instead of getting a good read on who people think are the top 3 players, you really just get this weird distribution of people wanting all of these players. If you ranked choice voted it, like last season, for example, it might have been everybody might have put Saka either 1, 2, or 3. And so Saka would have had the most top 3 votes. But if Odegaard and Rice edge him out, he winds up not being listed. Look, I don't want to get too wonky, but it's simply the point that I think the right way to do voting like this is to have people provide their top 3. And then you assign points, 3 points for first, 2 points for second, 1 point for third, total up the points, and that's how you get who wins. Because otherwise, you're going to get weird mathematical outliers. And ultimately, look, I have no problem with whoever the fans vote player of the season. I don't think it matters too much, but I think it may not reflect the appreciation people have for these players. And I don't know that it's necessarily good for the club to put it out when a guy like Gabby or Timber doesn't even finish in the top 3, or a Saka doesn't finish in the top 3, because nobody thinks Saka isn't loved. And Saka, by the way, finishing second this season and not in the top 3 last season makes no sense, right? Because there's no world where he had a better season this season than last season. So maybe this is just one of those things that isn't the best thing to be doing generally, but I don't have a strong take on it. It's just a fun social media thing, and I don't think we have to care about it much, which is why we're not spending a lot of time on it. Last thing, Clive, question number 10. What are your thoughts on the Club World Cup? It's coming. It's happening. It's a lot of money for the clubs participating. Over £100 million potentially at stake for the winner of this thing. It's happening in the middle of the summer. It's changing the transfer window. It's more football in the legs of these players. Now they're saying for the 4 years after you win it, you're going to have a badge on your chest for this thing. I mean, FIFA, get your head out of your own ass, please. Your farts don't smell that good. What are your thoughts on the Club World Cup?
I hate it. I hate it. I listened to John Obi Mikel talking about it. Like, it's a big tournament and we've got to get players in for it, and Chelsea are going for it. And it's like, I'm thinking, oh, mate, it's just another way for Chelsea to squeal out of PSR stuff for getting more money in their bin. I don't like it. The only way I can fight it is to vote with my eyes, and I'm just not going to watch it. And I'm really good, and I love my football. I watch anything in a football stadium, at any place and anywhere. But I'm not watching that because I want it to generally fail. And the motivations for it, I don't trust. It's just a money-making thing. It's a FIFA thing to try to leverage more power over those UEFA players, shall we say, and make them turn up and then entice them with money, knowing that regulations in each country are getting more and more stringent, so they're going to chase the dollars. Let's see what it looks like. Let's see how many players are playing, the good players. Let's see how long they play for. They were saying the other day, it's just to keep the players ticking over. Well, I'm sure the players like tick over in Mykonos and do some work in the gym. That's probably a much nicer way of doing it rather than being back with your clubs again and not having that mental and physical switch off. I don't like it. I don't like what it's representing. And football's becoming an all year-round sport. And people talk about player welfare, but they don't really care. Do you know one of my fears? One of my deepest fears. I'm going to share it with you now, guys. No one's listening, right? I'll share it with you now. One of my deepest fears. You know what it is? Burning out Bukayo Saka 5 years before he should be burnt out. Because that will be on us and the game and what the international game, the Arsenal game, the European game, the expanded World Cup, the expanded Euros, the expanded World Club Cup, the expanded Champions League, the thirst for everyone to do something in the cups. That thirst for winning is going to cost us something. And it'll be on all of us. Maybe not the fans, so we just watch and pay, but it's on all of us. And the game doesn't care. It doesn't care. It doesn't care about these young men. He's 23 years of age. He played a lot of minutes. And we all say we want to arrest him. When the team sheet comes out and he's not there, we're all petrified. And so it can't go on like this. It really can't. And if something was to happen to that young man, I would be devastated. He would be on the game, as a whole. And I don't think anyone's listening to me. So the only way I can do it is not watch. So that's what I'm going to do.
Harry, can you give it to me in 90 seconds or less?
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything that Clive has said. I find it interesting that the rest of the world seems to be taking this a lot more seriously than us. The fact that you've got clubs spending money to get players in early to have them at the Club World Cup. They're trying to bridge the gap between those clubs and the Premier League. It feels like that's what it's all about. It's all about money. Well said, and I probably also won't be paying much attention to it.
I mean, there's $1 billion of prize pool, 475 million in performance-based rewards, 525 million participation fees. That's total across everyone. Minimum prize for winner is 40 million. Maximum possible prize 125 million. Minimum prize, and a solidarity payment, target of an additional $250 million distributed to club football across the globe. There are regions and federations that need this. Let me just say this. I want to be cautious only because I wonder if this is a Euro UK bias that I have towards football where I say, who wants to watch this? But maybe there are people that are saying, I want to watch Boca Juniors play Manchester City. Maybe there are people saying, I want to watch Auckland City have a chance to play Chelsea. I want to watch Al Ali have a chance to play Bayern Munich. And I think it's tough because I can completely understand the idea that a global club competition that pits these clubs against each other can be fun for people of regions that support their local teams. Good to support your local team. Now you get to see your local team go up against the best and test themselves. That's exciting. My problem with it isn't that idea. It's the cynicism of where this comes in the calendar, of adding more football to the calendar, and the recognition that there's lots of fun ideas in football, lots of fun things you could do. Let's have a game every day, right? It's not that I don't see who it's for or why it can't be fun. It's just that we continue to expand the football calendar. Scarcity creates excitement. The most successful league in the U.S. for sports is the NFL. The NFL plays 18 times, roughly. Now I'm not saying there should be 18 football matches a season. I'm just saying I do worry that the overabundance of football not only potentially risks diminishing the quality of the football we watch and the health of the players, but removes the scarcity and makes it just a little less exciting. When you were a kid, maybe you got to watch 4-5 games a season. That's what was on TV. Why was the FA Cup huge? It was the one nationally broadcast game right in the UK. Now, you can watch everything all the time or just the goal clips on social media. Got to be careful about not destroying the scarcity that makes sports kind of exciting. But let's leave it there. That's enough of smelling my own farts for one day. I'm just kidding. I'll do it after I stop recording too. Clive, thank you very much.
You very much.
Harry, absolute pleasure. Can't wait to talk to you again.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really enjoyed that.
My name's Elliot Smith. We love you. And we will talk to you after Arsenal 10, transfer window nil.